There was a point in time over the last few years where our attrition, our turnover rate for security staff was 60%.
If I want to pretend I'm Joe Doe and take your image, your face, your video, your voice, and I want to replicate that, I want to be able to authenticate that and say, hey, this isn't Joe speaking to me. There's got to be something off there.
Everyone has a part in the security and safety of all of our guests and employees. And it doesn't stop just if security is in your title.
You guys communicate and have synergy with security and surveillance and cyber and even marketing and player development. And for so long, Joe, those departments were sideload departments.
To your point, I had a bad day and I said something stupid on the casino floor. That needs to get reported by all key stakeholders: risk, legal, security, HR. And there needs to be an identified path forward of how you're handling it so it doesn't put anybody at risk.
On the physical side, like, you guys can build a persona around the aggressor or the intruder. Like, you've got a face shot, you got a body shot, like, who that person is, or you have an inclination who that person is. More on the cyber side, you're dealing with a ghost. You can't go to a camera.
Cyber is the route that things are going. The deep fakes, the concerns around that. Is the new generation not the type that wants to go to your brick and mortar location? You need to create an experience that's going to attract people to come there.
I'll say this to my grave. You guys have the most difficult job protecting the environment in the casino. And so when you need to kind of offload that, all right, welcome to SVIP Live. My name is Taylor May, the founder of Security VIP, SVIP to short. I think we're having a little issues on the LinkedIn side, LinkedIn Live, so I'm hoping that this is showing on LinkedIn. If not, we are live right now on Facebook and YouTube. It says Instagram too. I don't know if Instagram is kicking off too, but maybe someone can drop a comment in the chat. But I know we are live, and today we are featuring the man himself. I have a good friend of mine I've known in the industry. His name is Scott McCartney. He's the head of personnel and facilities safety and security for the FIFA World Cup 2026. Now, Scott and I go back from his San Antonio Spurs day. I'm obviously based here in Dallas. I am a Mavericks fan. But hey, look, Scott is a Texan at heart. I know he's residing right now in Miami, Florida, getting prepped for the FIFA World Cup. But Scott, my friend, welcome to SVIP Live. How are you?
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's always good to be with you and see you in this hectic world that we're living in.
It is, man. And you're in beautiful Miami. I've been to Miami a couple times. So how are you liking the vibe right now there in Florida?
It is nice. It's very tropical. When I got here in June, it was extremely hot and wet. And, being from Texas, or not from Texas, from California, but in Texas, it definitely is a little bit more wetness here than it is there. You feel like you're in a sauna the whole time.
Summertime's coming up, man. We got to shed some pounds. So why
crazy.
Why not? Man, well, I'm going to keep lurking on this LinkedIn Live segment, so make sure we get our LinkedIn followers connected. But Scott, in the meantime, why don't you give some context to our listeners about your background, your experience, and kind of what you bring to the security industry?
Well, I certainly appreciate the time that they're all taking to listen to an old man tell about what he's done in his life. But no, it's been a great career. I did 27 years law enforcement in the state of California in Sacramento. And when I retired on the same day, I was hired as the first director of security, and this is 2017, as the director of security for the San Antonio Spurs. And I guess they've had security here and there, but I was the first director that they ever had. So I got to build kind of everything around it, help with, policies, procedures, safety and security of the team facilities, doing all the different things, travel, hotels, buses, planes, getting all that situated so that it was more secure and more safe for the team as they move through. And then obviously I was kind of like a security guy that they could call if they had issues, problems, concerns. They needed assessments of their houses to get better fortified, so that they felt safer at home. I would help them with that. The basic car accidents every now and then, you deal with that. You be the liaison between the police so that they don't have to. And you just do, you're doing a lot of different things. And, from law enforcement being on call 24/7 to Spurs being on call basically 24/7 for the last 7 years until I came here to FIFA. And now I'm not 24/7 anymore. I just do my day work, and I can pretty much be done with having to worry about phone calls and emergencies.
Yeah, I mean, and that's probably a change for you, man. Obviously, coming from the professional sports world in the NBA for what, 10 years you were with the Spurs? Is that correct?
7.
7 years? And so talk about that, I guess that parallel, or maybe there's differences between working in an NBA environment to now the soccer world, which I know in other countries, man, it's still called football. But
Right.
are there any differences or parallels there on the safety and security element that is new to you or evolving to you or anything different?
No, it's pretty much. I mean, when you come from law enforcement, and you go into the private business or private security business, you got to be able to see things black, white, and gray. There's got to be a gray area and areas that you can, communicate well, improve, get them better, allow them to understand where you're coming from experiences you've dealt with in their past. And basketball is fast. It's moving. The season just ended for most teams, but for preseason, summer league, preseason, the regular season, you're flying to city to city to city to city. You're gone about 55, 60 days if you spend the night and have dinner or whatever, and then fly again. But you're flying all the time, and you're getting on a bus, getting off a bus, getting in a hotel, another hotel, then the same night. You wake up in one hotel in one city, you fly to another city. So it's a lot of hustle and bustle and quick movements. And it's really not rocket science or difficult. It's just, your awareness, being aware of everything around you. When you're on the court and you're watching for, fans that may do something or cause a problem to a player, disrupt them. So you try to stay, alert and vigilant. And, unfortunately, part of the job for what we did as security for an NBA is, if there's a fight on the court, you run and get your players. You can't touch the other players. You get your players, and the security on the other team gets their players. Luckily, I didn't have to do that too much because our players were pretty disciplined with the type of coach we had. So it made life easier. Timing is big with the NBA. You got to have, especially if your coach demands it, you got to have, the timing, making sure the buses are where they're supposed to be, the planes leaving when it's supposed to be, all those components. And then you translate that to soccer or football, which I played when I was probably 5 years old, but I haven't played since. It's a different animal. It's a giant group. So FIFA is a pretty big deal. And when you work in security with FIFA, you have probably another 13, 14 security people in different functions. And then, I mentioned functions, and functions are function areas. So you have accommodation, you have, logistics, you have transportation, you have security, you have payroll, you have HR, you have workforce, you have all these different functional team services, guest or ops, all these different functionals. And what that does is that means you work together to accomplish certain things. Like a lot of these folks can't do a lot of their job without security's input. And so we provide that input. In my current role, I'm in charge of the safety and security for personnel and facilities. So what I'm dealing with is more, I have Miami, Mexico, and Canada. So I'm making sure that and if you think about it, it's a startup company in America, because this is the first, they don't have policies, procedures, things like that I had to develop and bring into the mix. You see a lantern around my neck, and access cards to get through in different floors and things like that. CCTV and getting that all lined up and making sure that we're consistent across the board. So, when someone from Zurich comes to visit the Miami office, their cards work with here, and vice versa. If I go there, or if I go to Mexico, or if I go to Canada. So it's a different way of doing security. It's not really, when I say personnel, my kind of like I have in the background, I can't see it now because I'm with you, but in the background, I have a tracker that has all where everybody is.
Mm.
And I can, if there's an emergency or something that occurs, then I can hover over where they are and I can see what FIFA employees are there. And if I need to, I can reach out to them and ask if they're okay. So that's kind of the personnel side of things. Whereas it's a lot of, it's office business work in a way. You're securing a building that has probably about 500 and something people in it. You try to work well with everybody and get along and do your part to make sure that they're all safe and secure.
Do you feel like, Scott, I mean, obviously NBA games are a little bit different than FIFA World Cup. I mean, people argue that the Super Bowl is the largest security event there is, but the World Cup, man, brings in, I think they said next year it's expect over 5 million people across all the events.
Yeah,
So, you,
this is the biggest sporting event in the world,
yeah,
by far. To use a combination, they say that one World Cup game happening in different cities at the same time is like having 8 Super Bowls at the same time in your city. So it's a giant, complex, uh, uh, mega event that people, and we've heard stories, people will sell their houses in the foreign country they come from just to watch their team play. They will sell everything to come over here and go to wherever their game's going to be, Miami, Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, LA, Seattle, San Francisco, you name the location, they'll sell everything and move to that area. They probably won't live in a house, just move there and go to every game, and that's it. I mean, that's the passion that they have. And one thing that a lot of people say, you don't want to get caught saying, is, we do Super Bowls, so we know how to handle this. You don't know how to handle something like this event. It is huge, and the people are passionate. If you've ever been to a soccer game, minor game or even an MLS game, the passion that some of those fans have just for those teams. And then you bring in some of the biggest names in soccer, which I only know one off the top of my head, but that tells you how much I know about soccer. But securing it is we have a motto here that's safety, safety, security, and service. So what we're trying to encompass everyone to understand when you work for this organization and you work for security in this organization at stadiums or wherever you may be, is that you provide that service element also. Try to calm things down, try to get people to understand what you're trying to say by the way you communicate and how you help them, along with the safety and security side of things.
It's always a fine balance too, as an attendee, balancing. Obviously, you want to have a good time. If I spend a lot of money going to the World Cup, which, by the way, Scott, I looked at tickets prices for the World Cup coming to Dallas here next June, I believe, and prices, man, just for a seat in the nosebleeds was like $700, and then obviously
Really?
on field level, it was going around like 25 grand for
Yeah.
which, I granted it's a big event, but to your point, if I'm an attendee, the last thing I should want to worry about is my safety and security going to an event like that when I want to cheer for my favorite team. So
Correct.
we talk about the customer experience angle. We talk about safety and security as a priority. So what do you think, man, is like, obviously I read people are looking at this event as over 5 million attendees coming to the World Cup next year. If I'm an attendee, what can attendees expect just from a safety and security element walking into a venue, whether it's in Philadelphia, whether it's in Dallas, whether it's in Mexico or Canada? I know it's international. I mean, what can they expect just from a security element to give me enough comfort to say, hey, I'm going to feel safe during this event?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And the best word you can say is consistent. Consistency. Doesn't matter if you walk, like you said, into any one of those stadiums, everyone will be trained the same to handle the security at those venues. A lot of those venues already handle, major events. So it's not going to be a real hard push to get people to understand. But the consistency of everything across the board makes it one World Cup. You know what I mean? Everybody's working together to make it safe and secure for people to have fun. A lot of it is just, the approach. You have a footprint of a venue. Well, because of that venue who runs Super Bowls or runs college games or whatever it may run, now we have a secondary perimeter that's further away that allows the safety and security of people as they move in. There's no crowding, there's no areas. It's more like a Disneyland walk, the way Disneyland used to have people walk to go on rides. That switchback back and forth. That allows the security that are there, the officers that are there, to be able to observe, watch, deter, obviously. And then, there's different checks that you're going to have to go through. The clear bag policy that most stadiums have will be pretty much in effect the same way. It's definitely there's going to be an app that everybody can download their tickets and get the information, which will give them information about how to, report something if something's wrong. Call 911 if you need to call 911. They have a section called the last mile, and the last mile is 1 mile away from the stadium where fans will march most likely. And they'll all be in the same colors. They'll all have their horns and all their different components. And so we have to be able to monitor that for their safety and the fans that get involved in that. And, it's in the summer, so it's going to be hot in every city. So you got to have the medical side of things, the water stations, the cooling stations, the different components to make someone feel like they're going somewhere where people care about them to get in safely and watch what they love to watch.
Speaking of, Scott, so I got to ask this question because I got this question about a week ago about, hey, Taylor, since you're hosting Scott on SVIP, you have to ask him, does he get free tickets to any of the events?
I do not.
Why?
I do not.
Why not?
We can buy them, but
yeah, discounted rate though.
Huh?
You get a discount rate?
I don't even know. I haven't even looked into it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm going to be so busy doing what I'm doing. I'm not going to be able to go to any of them anyway. So I don't need a ticket. But at the same time, it's not like the NBA where you can go in and say, "Hey, can I have? I have 5 buddies. Can I get extra tickets?" And that never was a problem in the NBA.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was one of the perks, I think, working for an NBA. Same with NFL and MLB. You always get, the games are so frequent with the MLB and NBA. You get tickets left and right. Just for some context from our listeners, I want to point this out. In 2018, the FIFA World Cup, hosted in Russia, was approximately 3 million attendees across all matches. In 2022, in Qatar, I know some people say Qatar, it was over 3.4 million attendees that came. And like I said earlier, next year, 2026, we're preliminary studies are showing that, again, attendees are going to be over 5 million across all events.
I think they're saying about 6 million.
Yeah, maybe more than that. So I guess my another question there, Scott, being the world's largest sports event across the industry, I saw some things around a task force being implemented by President Trump for the event. Obviously, local law enforcement agencies. Talk about any of those partnerships that you're working on for these events next year around collaborative security and safety efforts.
Yeah, no, it's a big deal. Anyone that's in law enforcement that may be watching or whatever, the partnerships with state, local, and federal partners is huge. You can't do this alone. We're relying on them to do the safety and security that we're trying to implement for these events. And you can't do escorts, the buses when moving around and different things. You got to have that relationship with those police departments around the country and Mexico and Canada to be able to understand, and when most security people are retired law enforcement, military, whatever it may be. And so that we have that ability to communicate with those partners because we understand what they're thinking. We understand their questions. We understand what they're going to try to provide for us. The task force is really big deal because that allows, the federal government to take a real big interest in the World Cup. In fact, we've had a few dignitaries come to the office here just to learn how big this really is, and with that comes, the partnerships and the help that we need to help secure such a big event. Because you have 16 in 26, you have 16 events, 3 in Mexico, 2 in Canada, and the rest in the United States, starting from the West Coast, moving to the East. And then what a lot of people may have heard or see is we are also in charge of doing the Club World Cup 25, which we're setting up right now. We're about 60 days from that start kick. So that's a huge undertaking, which is leading us to 26. So we're utilizing a lot of the same resources and garnering those relationships so that, and we don't want to burn those relationships because we're going to need them again in 26 when we come, prepare for that event.
So is it different per location, Scott, on how you guys prepare for safety and security? Are you using the same products or technologies or procedures for each event, or does it just depend on what kind of diversities at this event versus another event when it comes
No,
to
it's pretty much across the board. We
streamline?
go out with different RFPs and get people involved, and because you can't do it alone. There's not, just think canine. There's not that many canines in every state that you can be able to do this. So you have to maybe grab 2 or 3 canine organizations or companies and say, hey, you're on the West Coast, so you handle all the West side. You're in the central coast, so you handle that, and you're in the East Coast, and you handle that. You use those relationships and those partnerships to be able to do and keep it consistent throughout the events. It an event like this is run also by a main operations center, and then you got the international broadcast center, which is like ESPN on steroids.
Right.
All the people that are going to be commentating, doing interviews, doing all the different components. So you can see that it's a lot of intricate parts that are working together, and safety and security is probably the number one concern or want from FIFA, which is trying to, I think they say security and the pitch are the two, which is the pitch is the soccer field. The pitch are the two most important things in FIFA as far as security.
Walk me through. I'm trying to figure out how to ask this correctly, because it's interesting to me when I go to I'll give you an example. When I go to a casino, when you have a concert or an entertainer coming to town, there's mass foot traffic, there's crazy lighting combinations, and so safety and security, how they prioritize those events is unique. But on any given Sunday or any given day, safety and security is a little bit, I want to say, more relaxed, but not as uptight as an event coming to town. So maybe walk me through, because honestly, Scott, you're like a one-man show for this big event. I mean, obviously you have people around you, and local jurisdictions will help support you, but you're in this position for a reason. And so when you look at any given day versus an event like this, what does your mind immediately go to from a threat standpoint? Is it active shooter? Is it weapon detection technology that you need to put in? Is it internal issues? I mean, walk me through some of those, like that mindset.
Yeah, I think in the normal situation, active shooter, lone wolf, all these other little things that have happened at other sporting events and things like that, that's always in the back of your head. But the other thing is fan safety. I mean, we've seen it a few events in other organizations where, people are jumping fences, climbing fences, getting into ducts within the stadium, doing everything they can to get in, and they don't even have tickets. So we have to be able to prevent that from happening, and that's why we have developed a stronger perimeter, in a sense, to prevent those types of things from happening. You're always worried about, a car vehicle breach or anything like that. So you take those things seriously, and you have which a lot of cities, every city will have in 26, is called a fan festival, which is a watch party basically that's utilized to put tens of thousands of people in this area, and you'll be able to see all the matches that are all over the footprint, and that will go for 40 days. So that's the other thing everybody has to realize, is that 26 goes, leading up to it, we start probably like middle of June 11th, 12th of 26, and go all the way to almost the end of July. But we have to set up all those things well in advance of June. So you're talking April, May, which we're doing right now for 25. And then you ramp up, and you're you lock down I'll give you an example. We lock down a stadium pretty much from the minute we take it over till the last match in that stadium. It's locked down. So that helps with us to be able to better secure and keep secure the building, because we're obviously renting the building, like because we're doing NFL stadiums and some MLS stadiums, mostly MLS in the 25 tournament. But in the 26 tournament, it's all NFL stadiums that everyone's already been to, that from whatever city or state you live in. And then you add the 3 in Mexico, Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. And then you add Vancouver in Canada and Toronto in Canada. So there's a lot of opportunities for people, even in Canada, to come to America games, or Americans to go to Canada games. And again, these people will travel where if their team plays in LA, and then next plays in Seattle, and then next plays in Dallas, and then next plays in Miami or New York or wherever, they're all coming to that game. That's
Right.
their game. So that if you put two teams together that are rivals that could be really good or bad, then you have to account for those clashes that could occur. And luckily, we have a very heavy intelligence section, and so we're relying on the intelligence that we develop on the team's fans, the characteristics, what their likes are, what their dislikes are, what their secrets are, what they're not their secrets, so that we can utilize that and keep that as a way to give information to the local law enforcement and the partners that are assisting us.
Well, I was leading to my next question, but before I ask that question, Scott, I want to just ask our listeners, if anyone has a question that you would like me to ask Scott during this live interview, please drop it in the chat. I know we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and a couple other platforms, but if there's any questions that anyone has, please drop them in the chat. I will ask Scott on your behalf, as long as it's a legitimate question. We don't want any off-ball questions here. But Scott, my next question leading up to that point, when you mentioned lockdown, as soon as you enter the building, I guess it's twofold. Are you adhering to like the rules existing already at like an AT&T stadium? Like, are you following that kind of lockdown procedure, or you come in with FIFA and say, hey, this is what we're doing? You either go with it or you're not going to be here. I mean, so answer that question, and then my second question I'll ask you after that.
Yeah. So the lockdown is truly just that. Once we take ownership of it, the stadium, we do, like any lockdown that any stadium would do, you have security walk around, you have K9 walk around, you get it all locked down. And it has to be, locked down fresh that entire time. So that means your security is 24/7. That means you're utilizing certain things at that stadium to make sure that they're getting what they need to be able to do the business they need to do while we're in that renting that space. They also lock it down so they can control the pitch, make sure that the pitch stays as fresh as possible and as good as possible, so that it's a level playing field for the folks that are playing the games. But it's unique just because you're dealing with, you're talking, it's not like you're locking it down for a weekend to watch the Super Bowl. You're locking it down for 40 to 55 days, and you have to keep that way. And so
Right.
that takes a lot of resources and a lot of partners, and that's why you can't do it alone. You need to have teams of security, all the private security companies that are out there that we've seen in every event, they don't have enough bodies to incorporate what we need also. So we have to get more than one to augment, and based on regional. If you take the regional approach, and this is what a lot of law enforcement were doing back when I was still in law enforcement, especially in Sacramento, is they realized that we need to start to regionalize some of these things we have, because not all of us have, we don't all have a SWAT team. We don't all have a helicopter. We don't all have K9. So we start to regionalize those resources, so that, I may be on a scene of something, but I've got a Placer County Sheriff helicopter, not a sheriff helicopter from Sacramento, or I have a Sac PD helicopter versus something else. So it's the same way for what we're trying to do with all these stadiums is to one, be consistent, like I said, but two, you got to share these resources and provide resources to them. The stadium in their normal footprint has the resources they need to run whatever they're going to run. But if you remember, I'm adding a second perimeter.
Yep.
So everything on the outside of that first line wall of that stadium to our perimeter is all people we have to provide them so that they can do it. And that's cameras, that's canine, that's police officers, that's private security, that's turnstiles, just like you hear in the old days when we had to go through the subway, turnstiles. That slows people down. So and it also counts people.
Yeah.
So those are different ways that will get people through this process a little faster. But by regionally using resources, we can augment those needs from every stadium. So, and then you have to think about this too. The nice thing about the way this tournament plays out is when they start on the West Coast, if they play all their games and then lose and then they're out, then pretty soon those stadiums start to fall off so that we can start taking those resources and moving them east.
So this was the question leading up to the lockdown question, Scott. God forbid a situation happens inside a stadium, wherever you are in the world next year, or even this year when you have the event coming up this year. God forbid, maybe someone came in with a weapon or got a weapon for someone and stabbed someone, and maybe when someone's threatening a bomb. Do you guys have an evacuation plan in place? Do you
Yes.
guys allow people to just stay there and hide, or walk me through kind of like that crisis management
Yeah,
protocol?
there'll be so many cameras and so many visual applications that we can utilize while we're watching things happen, to be able to prevent things from happening. And two, it's a matter of training the staff that are in the stadium to be, eyes and ears. I know when your last interview with Joe, he talked about when he's out there on the uh, on the floor of the hotel or the casino, he's got to rely on other people to be his eyes also. He can't
Right.
be and see everything. So we rely on the stewards, we rely on the security, we rely on the people that are working the event to be that other points of eyes and ears. And then the crisis communication part of it is we'll be able to utilize our, command center type situation in a way to be able to quickly put in resources that we need to be able to mitigate whatever the problem is. The other thing is in Europe they allow you to bring in pyro and other little thing, big flags and big things, and so
Right.
those things are going to be removed from our events. And so flags, I think, are it depends on the size and what it is and what it says. But the other thing is the pyro is in the United States, we don't allow that at all in any stadium. So that will be something that will be very one of the things we'll be looking for the most, I think.
I gotta imagine, Scott, the biggest, maybe not the biggest threat, and this was one of the questions that came in. What's the biggest threat you've seen at FIFA? And you've been at FIFA a limited time, so I don't know if you've seen a big threat yet. But I would imagine same thing that happens in professional sports. Your team loses a game, a bad call is made, a fight breaks out in the stands.
Correct.
So how do you? Maybe someone's intoxicated, right? We all like to
Yep.
have a good time at games, but do you think that's one of the biggest threats coming up at the World Cup is just, people these fans that are just so passionate, which I've seen soccer fans, they're very into it, especially overseas.
Yes.
Uh, just like Philadelphia Eagle fans, obviously I'm going to get a lot of shit for talking about Philadelphia Eagle fans. They're very, very in tune with the game, but do you feel like that's a big threat coming is the fan breakouts, the
Yeah, no,
fights?
you see it on videos all the time. Probably YouTube is the best place to see a lot of
Yeah.
those things. Type in anything, and you'll see, excuse me, you'll see, fan things break out, and you start to wonder where the security is. That's because a lot of times you see them moving fences even, and people do die in these
Yeah.
events because they get really to the point where they their team lost and the other team won and they don't like that team, and therefore they're going to come across the barrier that or whatever barrier they need to come across to be able to get to those fans. And it's just a matter of having the right training for the people that are working the events, and not to run away from what they're trying to do. Prevent, make sure there's enough police involved to be able to mitigate certain things and be able to run to whatever the problem may be. And then there's always a medical side to every event, and so you want to make sure that the teams are safe, the players are safe, and then you also want to make sure that the fans are safe. And so we have different models of safety and medical safety for the people that are in these stands.
Another question that came in, Scott, that I think is a good one. Obviously, you've got your tenure in the security industry, but a question that came in was, do you have a favorite application or technology that you have implemented over the last few years? Now, a lot of people are going to talk about like, oh, pick my manufacturer because I rep this
Right.
manufacturer, this technology. But for you,
Trust
man, throughout your whole professional career, professional sports career too, is there any particular product, solution, technology that you're like, you know what, I need this at every event?
You know, I'm a big believer in CCTV. If I have eyes on things, then I can help quicker than I could if I had to hear about it. Someone run down the street or run up to my office and say, "Hey, there's a problem down on this floor." But if I can see those things while I'm working, while I'm doing things, and to use this as an example for such a large event like this, you need the stadium's cameras. You need to put your own cameras out so that you can see certain things. You can rely on cameras that maybe are around that are free around the event, whatever it may be, to be able to see those things, because it's one of the easiest ways to tell how people are acting, how people are. You can kind of zoom in on certain things and wonder if, okay, they're getting riled up. Let's start to think about that. But I think CCTV is, if you can't, we'd all want to have as many police and security as possible so that we can make sure every corner of every site is perfect. But you can't do that. So having good CCTV and good visual cameras, I think, is the best application you can have in a security environment to be able to, quickly respond to issues or incidents when you're not physically have a body standing right on top of it.
You guys will have that central command station, that SOC watching these cameras anyway, right? Have a
Correct.
team monitoring. Is there?
And then you're going to have the stadiums and their command posts watching the same videos that we're watching.
Well, I'm going to ask you this question, man. Is there any manufacturer when it comes to CCTV that you're like, yep, this is the one we use, or this is the one I trust?
There isn't yet. We haven't made a determination yet based on the RFPs we have out. So, but I know that there's a lot of good companies out there that have, and I've worked with a lot of them before in the past. When I got with the Spurs, and this is a funny story, but when I got with the Spurs, someone put cameras in before I got there. And so I looked at the cameras. I had about 12 cameras, to be able to see around the building. And they put the cameras on not on the corner, but on the side. So I couldn't see areas of the practice facility on the outside because the camera's in the wrong spot. Well, the person that put the cameras in wanted to charge me $5,000 to move 4 cameras to a corner where I could see all the way around 180 degrees.
Mm.
Well, I developed a relationship with a security camera group in San Antonio, and we developed this relationship and helped with getting new bioreaders to get into the building and things like that. That he says, I'll do it for $500. And so I spent $500 to get cameras to get 24/7 full camera view of the practice facility, come and going, outside, cars approaching at night, whatever it may be. We caught a guy on the roof one time. I mean, you definitely need cameras to be able to do a lot of the good work. And then the other benefit to that too is I can have a camera on a cell phone, I can have a camera on a computer, and I can have a camera on a wall. And the nice thing about that is, and it's much like the Spurs, and I know it's pretty much a given in any CCTV or camera company, is I can be able to watch all those things no matter where I'm at.
Right.
And those things are very important, and now with new technology and different things, you have an intercom system that has cameras. So you have extra cameras within, and people put their faces near it because they're trying to talk. So they put their face in. And so now you have clear visual of who's doing what and what's going on. I think that's the best way to be able to utilize without as full complement of tons of resources, you use cameras to mitigate some of those other little things.
What's funny is a lot of casinos with those like pinhole cameras or those ATMs or those cameras that are intercom cameras, they put facial recognition now on those
Yeah.
cameras because they get a good face shot
Yeah.
detection. I want to point to this, Scott. You've been on my podcast before, but I think it was a while ago. You made a comment around how if people just looked up from their phones to say hi or
Correct.
greet you, we would have a much safer world. And
Yeah.
that really struck a chord with me, and it struck home with me because you're exactly right. We live in such a technology-driven world where everyone's on their smartphone, and I get
Yep.
it. You can do a lot of things now. You can make a shit ton of money now
Yep.
on your phone. But you're right. When it comes to just having that connection, and also like someone might be going through a bad day. You don't know what the hell they're going through. If they just looked up, or if you looked up and just said, "Hey, you
Yep.
look great today. Hey, it's how you doing? How are you?" Walk me through that for our listeners because I think that was a very
Yeah,
important topic.
that came about when for those that I don't know on the call, or when I obviously had 27 years law enforcement. Well, in those 27 years, I developed a lot of skills, obviously. But one of the best ones was when I was the active shooter training coordinator for the state of California, and I went around different businesses and taught active shooter training. And I always summed it up with the final slide, one of the final slides, which is that situational awareness tips. And it's basically to your point. I said, look, when I was young, I didn't have a phone when I was when I was a kid. Yeah, I didn't get a phone until I was probably a real good phone until I was probably out of college.
Yeah.
But everyone shook hands. Everybody saw each other. Everybody said hi to everyone. Everyone was, polite walking down the street. Now I know today is totally different, but the problem is with today is everybody's, to your point or to my point, they're stuck in their phones.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if you walk down the street and you don't have your phone out and you look at people as they walk at you and you smile and you nod your head, good morning, good evening, whatever, I guarantee you're going to be safe walking all the way through because as soon as a bad guy recognizes that you're not paying attention, he's going to swoop in on you.
Right.
But if you see them before they see you and you acknowledge that you see them, chances are you're not going to become a victim because they see you, that you saw them. In the old saying with women going to and from the grocery store, or to and from a bank, or wherever they're going, carry your keys and put it through your middle fingers and keep the key sharp so that you have it so you can hit people and do things. It's the same thing with a phone. Don't park next to vans when you park in a parking lot. Look around when you park. You see videos on YouTube, you see social media videos too of, $20 bill on the ground, don't pick it up because this is why. You got to just pay attention. If people paid attention more, there'd be less victims who probably wouldn't have been a victim if they would have been eyes up. I mean, whatever text you get can wait. And if you have to, go into a business, do your business with your phone, get your phone stuff done, and then go back outside and start walking again. The other thing is when you're walking down a street, I'm a big believer that, I don't like people behind me, obviously. So I always tend to look back to make sure that someone's not coming up on me. When you're walking down a city street and you have these little inlets where business doors are and things like that, walk to the right of those a little bit so that you're not really close to them in case somebody just jumps out. It's just situational awareness. Know your surroundings, know what's happening around you. It doesn't take a lot to do, and it could save your life one day.
Well, I think that was one of the greatest pieces of advice I've heard in a while. Was just look up and be present.
Yes.
Why can't you be present? But and that's one of the things that concerns me, Scott. Is my wife's pregnant right now with her second baby, and obviously if she's carrying my other daughter who's about to be 2 years old, she goes to the store. A bad person, a nefarious actor will see a pregnant person carrying a child and say,
Correct.
"Oh, they're struggling. I can take advantage of this opportunity." So one of the things I've always told my wife is like, you got to have eyes in the back of your head. You got to stay
Yep.
vigilant. You got to be quick sometimes. And there's been times, man, where she felt like she's been followed,
Yeah.
in a store. And that's what these bad people look for, is people that are just, vulnerable,
Yeah. There's so many different things you can say too. If you feel like you're being followed while you're driving, drive to a
Yeah.
police department.
Yeah.
Don't drive home. if you feel like, the old saying, don't drive home the same way every day, drive a different way, so that, if somebody's watching you for a while, and I'm not saying that well, I am saying that there are people like that out there, but anyway, you do what you can to keep yourself safe. And that means, obviously, when I was a kid, we didn't lock doors, and I had a half door because I lived in Balboa Island, Newport Beach, and we had a half door because the weather was so great in the beach, area. But nowadays, everybody locks their doors, and that's good. I mean, if you feel necessary to lock your door, you live in a community where you feel like you have to lock your door, lock your door. The old saying too is, and this is what we used to say in law enforcement, even if you don't want cameras, but you buy a broken camera, even though the glass looks like it's fine, and put it up somewhere right where
That's all right.
people would walk up to, they're not going to look at your house. They're going to go somewhere else where no one has a camera. So you can get old, rusty, not, I wouldn't say rusty, but I would get old cameras, and even if they don't work, just put them up on under your eave, and I guarantee you, a bad guy is that stupid, he'll go, oh, that has cameras, or a light that turns on when you walk up. Those are all good things to have, um, to keep people safe. In security business, or what I do here now, and it's the same thing with the Spurs. I have to say, I have to be right 100% of the time. They have to be right once. I'll be damned if they're going to be right on my watch. And so you have to have a mentality that allows you to think like a bad guy, which police officers are notoriously the best bad guys because we know how to think like bad people. And you mitigate those things by getting certain resources, Ring cameras and Simply Safe and all these other little camera things now are cheap, not as expensive as it used to be. And it's an easy way to be able to safeguard your home, safeguard your property. And then personal safety is just awareness, just being aware. When you
Well, I
pull
mean,
into a parking lot, look.
perception's reality, right? At the end of the day, and if they see a camera or what have you set up, to your point, the odds are they're probably not going to mess with you. And even if it's a dummy camera, it serves as a great deterrent.
Right.
To your point, so I do agree with that, man. It's the world we live in today versus probably when you grew up, and even when I went to high school, is a whole different ball game now. Because again, these kids are going through active shooter drills. These kids have mental
Yes.
health they have to worry about. There was a stabbing man here in Dallas a couple weeks ago, which you probably heard, at a track meet because a kid brought a knife to a track
Yep.
meet and they,
Tragic.
got into it. So that's a huge thing going on right now. So the environment now, I would say, is still is totally unique. It evolves every single day. And then I want to address your second point, the law enforcement question. Obviously, coming from law enforcement, you understand what these bad guys do, and you operate, know what they're going to do. The same thing applied, man. When I speak with casinos and retailers and hospitals and schools, I'm like, if you want to learn how to truly protect yourself and how to secure yourself, you should learn from someone who does it for a living or someone who has
Correct.
gotten away with it. And there's a
You know,
lot of casino scams out there that do it.
right. And if you haven't already, or you maybe you're running a business, or you have a business and you have maybe 200 or maybe 50 people, doesn't matter, 25 people in your business, whatever it may be, there's nothing to say you can't call your local law enforcement in your neighborhood and have an officer come over and give you a presentation on situational awareness, what to do in an emergency, how to evacuate, where you go. Do you have an evacuation plan? If you don't, we can help you develop one, whatever it may be, so that you can get the people. Like when I did the active shooter training, I probably did 1,000 presentations, and it got to the point where it was so requested that the entire state of California, um, uh, I've been out of California for so long, I'm gonna forget the acronym, but the state water system. So all the water system for the entire state all have these offices throughout the state, and they have anywhere between 50 to 100 people in those offices. So they brought, since I was a part of the state Homeland Security at the time, they brought me in and said, hey, do your active shooter. It's an active shooter class that takes about 2 hours total if you ask questions, but I can do it in less than an hour, because it's that easy to understand. There are a lot of websites you can go to see videos on active shooter, run, hide, fight videos. Those are really good to learn, to get yourself kind of understanding how to protect yourself. You know, the when I used to teach that class, the thing that was always the easiest was saying run. Okay, well, doesn't mean run as fast as you can. It means get out as fast as you can. And if you have a buddy or somebody that can't get out as fast as you, then you pick that person up if you can, and you get them out. And secondly, if you have to hide in places where there's no windows, the door locks. And into some circumstances, you may have to hide under your desk, and you pull your chair in, and you get as dark as you can, and you get as back as far as you can. And then the third thing is the fight part. And I spend more time on the fight than I spend on the other, because when you have to fight for a situation like this, you're fighting for your life.
Yeah.
There are no rules. And I tell you, there are no rules. That means if that person gets in there, you have to have a mentality that the three of us that are in this room, or the four of us that are in this room, are going to work together, and we're going to decapitate, deny that person whatever thing they are. The other thing you have to remember too, and this is bringing back a lot of memories, but if you have a firearm and it's a rifle, when you go through a door, pretty much the firearm is going to come first. So if you're aware of that, then when that firearm comes through, you grab that firearm and you do whatever you can to protect yourself, to the point that if you take the firearm away, shoot the person.
Yeah.
You have no idea if he has another gun, if he has a knife or whatever it may be. So, and then, you know, police are going to come, put the gun down, put your hands in the air, and you have to follow those guidelines. But I used to say it's like shark. If you ever watch a shark attack its prey, their eyes roll back and they just go and do their thing. Well, you have to have a mentality of a person who's fighting for your life that same way. I used to say this all the time, and I don't know if I could ever do it, but I used to say you have to have a mentality, and I sleep well at night, but you have to have a mentality that, you know, I'm going to pull your heart out of your chest and shove it down your throat. You have to have that kind of mentality if you want to protect yourself or others. And I can't teach you that. We all have it in our own system. We all have it in the ability to protect ourselves, and you'd be surprised how well you'll do if you just fight for your life. And, you know, you grab anything, knives, forks, staplers. Best one is a fire extinguisher. Smoke them and then hit them over the head with it. Whatever you have to do. I mean, you're saving your own life or life of people that are with you. And that's a huge. And people get pretty. You know, I had a lot of female employees that would come up and be like, "Man, I never really thought of it like that." And
Yeah.
you're teaching people how to think, how to be better at what they're doing, and be aware. And that's the importance of, you know, personal safety, office safety, whatever the safety is just being aware of your surroundings and know things can happen, and you do everything you can to prevent them.
I mean, there's no disagreement for me, my friend. You've known me for years. I think you're spot on with everything you said, especially with the world we live in today. It's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
I made a post yesterday, Scott, about a phrase that's been around for years. You know this phrase: "See something, say something."
Yep.
We've heard about that forever. But to your point about running, a lot of times when there's an event that's going down, whether it's an active shooter situation or, you know, whatever, maybe a threat inside a school, if there's a way out, get the
Get
fuck
out.
out. You know,
Yep.
like, and don't just hide there, right? But if there's not a way out, then to your point, yeah, you need to go to somewhere where you're, you know, hidden and disclosed. And
Yeah. The thing that a lot of people don't understand is an active shooter incident lasts probably about 8 to 10 minutes before either they kill themselves, they get attacked by the people that are left, which is a huge positive, or by the time the police get there and then they run straight in. In that time frame, you know, you have to be able to do everything you can to save your own life, because the police aren't, you know, they're not going to be right there as soon as it happens.
right.
So you have to be able to be, you know, head on a swivel and just know your surroundings, and work together, work with your team members who are in your office or around, and have that training in that office so that people understand, you know, one of the big things here, I'm used to earthquakes in California and wildfires. But you come to Miami and now it's hurricanes and things like that, high wind situations, which I've never been a part of.
Right.
And knock on wood, I hope never to be why I'm here for 2 years. But you have to be able to train people. A lot of the people that are working for FIFA come from overseas and are foreign. Well, they don't know what a hurricane is. And so you try to explain that to them and teach them and get them understanding. Part of the safety of an office like this with 4 floors and over 500 people working for one, event or 2 events, if you throw 25 into it, is they can't do what they're doing if they don't feel safe at work. And so I do everything humanly possible to make them feel safe at work. And when they go out to the parking lot, to the high-rise parking lot, walk with a buddy, walk with your phone not in your hand. Walk to your car and click your horn. If you can make your car sound go, your horn beep the whole time, then push the button so that it does that. It'll scare off any kind of problem, any kind of thing that may be lurking. When you walk by cars, make sure there are people in them. And if there are, what are they doing in the car or sitting in a parking lot when it's 5 o'clock?
Right.
Just be thinking those things.
Well, these are just
Again, I sleep very well.
learnings.
Don't get me wrong. I sleep like a baby, but I think about these things all the time. And I'll be damned if, you come through my house, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that you'll never leave, ever.
Well, it's good because I think the everyday person doesn't think like this, and I think if you give them a couple tidbits right there to think about when it comes to when they go to events in public or their surroundings. Because even when I go to dinner with my wife, I make sure I know where the hell the exit door is, or how to
Exactly.
get to the exit door. So Scott, we're running up on the top of the hour. I do want to ask my listeners, if you have one more question I want to ask from the crowd, I will ask Scott a question. I know we're getting close to the end here, Scott, but while we wait for a question from the audience, if we get one, if not, not a big deal. But any last comments or recommendations you want to make for the upcoming World Cup next year that maybe you're excited about, maybe safety and security wise, or maybe just in general about the event coming up? What do you?
Yeah, no, I'm blessed to be a part of this organization. I've worked, like I said, I've in California, I was a part of the Large Stadium Initiative, and I think that's where you and I first met. And I was doing the Homeland Security thing, and I had all mass gatherings in the state of California, and I love sports. And so sports has always been kind of my forte. And then you throw in all my Homeland Security and law enforcement background, that I got with NCS4. And if you haven't heard of NCS4, I think you should go to that, or TEACS.
Yep.
Help develop club courses for them for sporting events. I used to teach and wrote courses for sports incident management, enhanced sports incident management, risk management, evacuation planning. And those are things that people can get into, because working in sports and I'm working for the biggest sporting event in the world.
Yeah.
And I can be able to say that I did that, and the other 499 people that work here can say the same thing. We all put a part of ourselves into these 2 events.
I just hope you're compensated well
for your
effort.
I'm not. You have a retirement from law enforcement, it's always a benefit. And you live in Texas, and it's not income tax. It's even a better benefit. And then you move to a state where you temporarily rent for a couple of years, and you get a pretty good salary, and you don't have income tax here. And then it goes back to where the wife is in San Antonio. I'm not a player's salary, but I do well.
Hey, happy wife, happy life, right? That's
right.
The name of the game. Well, I don't think we've got any more questions, Scott. We are at the top of the hour, my friend. I do genuinely appreciate you spending some time.
I appreciate you
on SVIP. Man, hey, if anyone wants to learn more about yourself, my friend, what's the best way to get in contact or connect with you?
They definitely can email me. It's just my name, Scott.McCartney at fwc2026.org, or I'm not going to give out my cell phone, because it's just, I went from 24/7 getting calls to hopefully never getting calls unless it's happy calls, at at nighttime. So, but it's been nice. It's a good way to go out of a long career in safety and security, and enjoy the rest of the life.
Scott, my friend, I appreciate the time, dude, on hanging out.
Appreciate you. Appreciate your listeners.
All right, guys and girls, that was Scott McCarthy, the head of personnel, facilities, safety, and security for the FIFA World Cup 2026. If you're not connected with Scott yet on LinkedIn, make sure to send him a connection request. I do appreciate you guys tuning in. I want to thank my sponsors, AMEC Technology, for sponsoring this episode. I want to keep the live present for another 10 minutes. Going to my next scene. Make sure to subscribe at SVIP, and stay tuned for our next interview, because next Wednesday, I believe, we'll be sitting down with a director of security in the healthcare sector. So, Scott, my friend, have a great day. Thanks for hopping on.
You too. Thank you all. And thank you, listeners.